Chapter 691 The Chosen One. 7. Are my words bringing back memories to you? It was Jezebeth's words that coaxed Kevin out of his thoughts and back into the present. When he raised his head, he looked directly into Jezebeth's eyes. How much do you know? Kevin asked, his eyes losing focus every so slightly. Not much. Jezebeth replied, walking around the patch of grass he was on. My recollections are rather disorganized. Only fragments of the past remain in my memory. Many times I recall beating you. I recall the various methods I used to defeat you, but I do not recall the exact events that transpired. Jezebeth's feet came to a sudden pause and his head turned. Of course, this is due to the fact that I have not yet amassed every fragment. Once I've collected each and every one of them, I'll naturally remember everything. I see. Kevin blankly stared at Jezebeth and slowly closed his eyes. No one knew what was on his mind at the moment. Slowly, he opened his eyes and stared directly at Jezebeth. So the reason why you called for me is just for this? No. Jezebeth waved his hands in the air. Even though his actions were a little over the top, Kevin felt uneasy around him. Jezebeth exuded an air of calm and self-assurance, which gave the impression that he had everything under control at all times. And Kevin's countless regressions had proven that this was the case the majority of the time. Of course, things were different this time. Jezebeth continued. Not really the reason I called you here. I've just been wondering. If the records are your enemy, why don't you just work with me? Why don't you just allow me to consume the earth and access the records? I can put an end to them for you. If that is your objective. Kevin merely smiled at Jezebeth before lowering his head and murmuring. You wouldn't understand. What wouldn't I understand? Jezebeth asked, the smile on his face fading. Tell me precisely what I would not comprehend. From what I can tell, your objective is the records. The same applies to me. If we work together, we will easily be able to get to the records. Once we reach them, I will assist you in defeating them. What wouldn't I understand? Heh. Kevin let out a soft chuckle and Jezebeth's face became expressionless. You think I'm capable of beating the records? Me? The being that was created by the records. Kevin shook his head and waved his hand in the air as the world around him began to disintegrate slightly. The mountains, the clear blue sky, the mountains. It seemed as though everything was beginning to shatter like glass, including Jezebeth, who did not move from the spot where he was standing. Since you've already figured out almost everything, I'm sure you know that it's not possible for me to fight the records. You should know full well that I was born to obey the records, and regardless of whatever happens, that will never change. It was common knowledge that a puppet couldn't fight its own master. Regardless of whether Kevin hated the records or wanted to fight them, it was impossible for him to do that. It was against his very nature, and betrayal would only lead to the destruction of his existence. I can't defeat what controls me, and I know that you know that. Kevin retracted his hand briefly before turning around and raising it once more. A dazzling white glow materialized on his arm and completely enveloped it. This was all that I needed to know to prove my hypothesis. However, just as he was about to completely shatter the illusion he was in, he heard a couple of faint words coming from Jezebeth's direction. Kevin redirected his attention toward him and began to formulate his response. However, just as he was about to open his mouth to respond, his eyes stopped on a spot right behind Jezebeth, and for a split second his face tensed. Wow. Jezebeth smiled at Kevin as he extended his hand in front of him and then slowly closed it into a fist. There's no need to be shocked. I'm sure he will be even more shocked than you, but that doesn't matter. Our time together is over, and I found out everything that I wanted to know. Crush. Before Kevin could even finish his sentence, the world around him shattered into a million pieces. You better take care of your body. It'd be a pity if you died before I even made it to Earth. Kevin was only able to hear those words for a moment before he was whisked away and found himself back in his office. Cough, cough, cough. It was at that point that he once more began violently coughing, and blood once more began to spill all over the floor, splattering all over the gray carpet beneath him. As the excruciating pain that had been radiating through his chest continued to intensify, he had no choice but to get down on one knee and support himself by placing his arm over the wooden desk that was next to him. Shit. He was suffering from the consequences of his decision to use the Akashic laws, despite the state that his body was in. Nearly half of Kevin's organs had failed, and if it weren't for the thin layer of mana that was still circulating through his body and into those organs, Kevin would have died right there and then. Blurg. Coughing eventually led to him vomiting, and the floor was soon splattered with even more blood. The world began to spin and Kevin's vision gradually darkened. Thankfully, Kevin was able to hang on to the last bit of sanity he had and managed to keep his balance before collapsing to the ground with his back resting against the wooden frame of his desk. Lowering his head, Kevin's vision spun, and his eyes drifted toward his hands, which were trembling uncontrollably. I don't have much time left. The aftermath of the conflict that took place between Suriel and Run was not a pretty sight. The sky was pitch black and the surface lands were demolished. Large swaths of the ground were pitted with craters and radiated with residual demonic energy. The decaying bodies of the fallen soldiers were still lying on the ground, where they had been left, even though it had been weeks since the battle had ended. A rancid and sulfurous odor persisted in the air, permeating a significant portion of Amora's landscape, which was currently dead silent. Not a single living creature was in sight. Crack. The tranquility and silence of the world were abruptly shattered in one of the secluded parts of Amora by a disruption in the sky, which was followed by the sudden appearance of a gate in the middle of the Iki. It was from this gate that two demons emerged. Their auras, which completely engulfed the region that encircled them, created a further imbalance in the world as the demonic energy in the air suddenly started to shift in their direction. As one of the demons surveyed the surface of the world, a voice that was both raspy and ominous reverberated through the air. What happened over here? It appears that a major battle has broken out. Big would be an understatement. The demonic beings touched down softly on the surface of the scorched earth. The moment their feet touched the ground, one of the demons knelt down on one knee and ran his long, slender finger along the surface of the scorched earth. The demon pinched a piece of earth and brought it close to his nose in order to catch a whiff of it. After catching a whiff of the earth, the granulated earth fell from his fingers, and the demon slowly stood up. According to the residual demonic energy that is still present on the ground, the battle took place about 2 weeks ago, which is roughly the same time that we stopped communicating with Duke Suriel, the one in charge of overseeing this small planet. From the looks of things, the battle ended in the orcs' favor. Or more like they both were killed. The other demon muttered, his brows slowly contorting into a deep frown as he wondered. How is that possible? They naturally went through the motions of reading the report about the condition of Amora before coming here. According to what they knew, it was absolutely impossible for the orcs to triumph over the demons in battle. Their forces were too few and they had no Duke-ranked prospects. It's obvious. They had someone to help them. The other demon replied, his voice turning more sinister and his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. This is not something that the orcs are even remotely capable of accomplishing. They were successful in obtaining assistance from a third party in some inexplicable way. After lowering himself once more to the ground and picking up some dirt from the ground while allowing it to run down his fingers, the demon briefly closed his eyes and his voice deepened. I can feel the presence of some residual mana within the soil. It's faint, but the power contained within is immeasurable. I can definitely see how a Duke Suriel would lose to it. The demon's eyes opened very gradually as he watched the last grain of earth fall from his fingers. Before issuing a command in a chilly tone, he looked at the other demon and slowly combed his long pink hair behind his head. Report the findings to the Lord. I'll take a look around the world. I'll trace the mana around the world and see where he has been. I have a feeling that I'll find something very interesting soon enough. Fwape. The demon's wings suddenly spread out behind his back, casting a significant shadow over the region directly in front of him. The next instant, with the beat of his wings, a sound that sounded similar to a flap of the bedsheet echoed, and the ground beneath him began to split apart. An afterimage of the demon was left behind. It was a process that took several seconds, but eventually the afterimage of the demon disappeared, leaving nothing in its wake, and the world turned silent. Chapter 692 Melland. All the mana compressors have been placed as you have ordered. We are now waiting for the next set of instructions. Hemlock appeared emotionless as he sat on his throne and stared ahead. His attention was drawn to the empty space in front of him, where a black circular sphere was displaying a number of different scenarios simultaneously. The space around him warped and he opened his mouth. Have you done as I've asked? While you were installing the mana compressors, have you been vigilant for any creatures or animals that may have been hiding nearby? Yes. A black man with a fierce scar running through his face responded to the question while kneeling on one knee and wearing all black. We have, as you've suggested, pretended not to notice them. What should we now do? Should we alter the placement of the mana compressors? No. Hemlock shook his head. His gaze began to wander in the direction of the mana compressors that were depicted in the void projections that were in front of him. Keep the mana compressors as they are and don't let the little animals die. Make sure to be oblivious to them. As you wish. The reply came from the individual dressed in all black, and then he vanished from the scene, exiting the grand hall, which was at that time occupied by 16 different people. Everyone was looking wearily at Hemlock, whose expression did not change at all despite the extremely solemn and chilly atmosphere that permeated every inch of the hall. Without waiting for anyone to say anything, Hemlock opened his mouth to speak. I'd like an elder to make their way to each of the mana compressors. Alliance members will likely soon make their way to the mana compressors with the intention of destroying them. I would like for you to ambush them when they are least expecting it. His words were met with silence, and the temperature in the room suddenly dropped to an extremely low level. Hemlock, who had become aware of the palpable lack of conversation in the space, looked around at the various occupants of the room without making a sound. I understand that you are all wary after what happened not too long ago, but I assure you, it will not happen again. Their sacrifices were for a greater cause. Once again the hall fell into silence. Hemlock's eyes sharpened at the sight and he slowly stood up. His gaze lingered over each and every one of the figures that were currently seated on their respective thrones, and as it did so, a potent aura started to emerge from his body. He opened his mouth again. This time his tone was a lot more threatening. I'll rephrase myself. I will spare your life if you make yourself useful and listen to my orders. As his aura continued to expand, the pressure that was already permeating the room started to expand as well, making it increasingly difficult to breathe for those who were present. So long as the monolith finds you useful, you should anticipate being spared. Mo Jinhao and his companions had long served their cause and were no longer of any use. You can count your blessings in retrospect. I could have chosen any one of you to sacrifice yourself for the cause, but I didn't. Why, you ask? Hemlock licked his lips slightly. The answer is rather simple. It's because you were lucky enough to still be useful for the cause. If the tension in the room had been relatively low when they had entered, it was now at an all-time high as absolute silence prevailed throughout the expansive halls of the monolith. Fearing that they would incur Hemlock's wrath, no one dared to utter a single word, let alone breathe loudly. At this very moment the fate of their lives was in his hands. They had only recently discovered that the chip that had been implanted in their heads contained a potent explosive device that would kill them instantly. I knew that there was something with the chip from the very beginning. Clementine Manuel, one of the elders of the monolith, muttered to himself, his gaze coldly lingering over Hemlock's body. Regarding the chip in their heads, not having it was really not an option for them. They were instructed by the demons with whom they were contracted to obey Hemlock's every command without uttering a single word about it. Clearly, this was something that was far beyond their control. If not even the demons they had contracts with could do anything, it was obvious that someone with an unfathomable amount of power was controlling everything from behind. The only thing they could do at the moment was lower their heads and follow orders. They had no choice but to. How's it going? As soon as I emerged from my own training room, the first thing I did was make my way to Ryan's room, where everyone was congregating and staring at the large screens in the front. On the screen, there were a number of strange objects that appeared to be funneling the mana in the air and causing some kind of dense black fog to be released into the atmosphere. Looks like you guys have located all of the mana compressors. Familiar with the objects and was able to recognize them immediately. You're finally out. Ryan unenthusiastically said, his face a couple of inches away from the screens. Don't lean in too closely. It's bad for your eyes. Ava said, standing beside him with an arm outstretched and a couple of birds perched on top. Ryan turned around and pointed at his eyes. It's fine. I've already had surgery on my eyes. They won't get any worse by the blue light. You do you. Ava rolled her eyes and cocked her head ever so slightly as one of the birds moved up her arm and chirped inside her ear. Her expression quickly changed and she looked at me. Approximately 8 mana compressors are concealed within the outskirts of Ashton City, slowly releasing demonic energy into the atmosphere. If this continues, the entire city will become engulfed in demonic energy, and the monolith's forces will have an advantage when they invade the city. While I was listening to her report, the brows between my eyes began to furrow slightly. This is getting troublesome. The fact that contractees were able to simultaneously wield demonic energy and mana was the primary factor that made them so scary to face. The spread of demonic energy into the atmosphere would give the forces of the monolith a significant boost in strength, which would put the Alliance in a disadvantageous position. We need to get rid of the compressors as soon as possible. If they stay, it is highly likely that they will cause trouble further down the lines. It was a stroke of good fortune that, with Ryan and Ava's assistance, I had eyes over the majority of the human domain. Because they were both working for me, I was able to keep an eye on everything at all times, and as a result, I knew the exact location of each mana compressor. Are you suggesting that we get ready? I'm sure Liam would love to have a go. Leopold, who had been silent up until this point, finally opened his mouth. He was sitting on the sofa at the end of the room with his legs crossed. I'm not saying this for his sake, but for Hein's sake. I haven't seen that guy without a black eye ever since we returned from Amora. I'm sort of feeling for him. And whose fault do you think this is? Ava's brow raised, glancing at him from the corner of her eyes. You have no right to talk when you're one of the reasons why he is in the state that he is. I stopped. Rubbing the bridge of his nose, Leopold looked away from Ava. The sight caused me to shake my head, and just as I was about to say something, Ryan's voice reverberated through the room. I'd hold off on the operation for now. I have a bad feeling about this. What do you mean? I turned to look at Ryan and I moved a little bit closer to him. I observed Ryan's expression, which revealed that he was currently frowning deeply as he stared intently at the screens in front of him. More specifically, the area around the mana compressors. Things seemed to be a little bit too easy. Take a look at the screens. He pointed at the screens with his finger. As you probably already know, we are currently observing the movements of the monolith through the cameras installed in the animals that Ava controls. Although I don't believe the monolith will care much about a few rats and birds scurrying about, the fact that none of them did anything or even noticed the animals despite being in such a restricted area is somewhat suspicious. You have a point. I rubbed the bottom of my chin, deeply contemplating over Ryan's words. Indeed, if things were as Ryan said, then the situation was certainly suspicious. Was the monolith perhaps trying to set up a trap? Creating the illusion that they were unaware that we were watching them and then luring us into the area before springing an ambush on us with a powerful force? If that were really the case, then it would be extremely dangerous. There was just one thing that made me question whether this was really the case. My head turned to face Ava's direction. How many people are aware of your abilities? Apart from Issa and Nor, I don't think anyone should be aware of your new skills, right? Apart from you guys, no one else should know. Ava answered, her voice exuding confidence. I shifted my attention back to the monitors and mumbled. Then maybe we're just overthinking things? I hope so. Ryan replied, reclining in his chair and closing his eyes. Opening them up again, he mumbled. It might just be me overthinking things, but I don't want to take any risks. If things truly turned out to be this way, then I fear that. Everyone in the room understood what Ryan was trying to convey even before he finished his sentence, and the atmosphere quickly became tense as a result. You guys don't have to worry too much. I patted Ryan's chair, looking at everyone in the room. With the edges of my lips curling slightly, my voice softened. We won't personally be going to the mana compressors. As I've said before, we won't move for at least a couple more months. I removed my hand from the chair's top before making my way out of the room. Ryan, go tell this information to Kevin. Tell him about your findings and also tell him about this being a possible trap. Are you sure? Yeah, our job is to just stay put for now. Like I've said before, enjoy your time with your family while it lasts. I reached out and grabbed the door handle and then I carefully retracted it. Keep up the good work. Clank. The door behind me closed and my feet came to a sudden stop. Standing a few centimeters from the door, I raised my hand and smiled bitterly while staring at it. If not for the fact that I'm in no state to fight, I would have certainly loved to go directly. What the others did not know was that my strength had dropped all the way from SS- rank to S in the previous month as I attempted to adapt to the demonic blood within my body. Obviously, this was not permanent as I had sealed off portions of my body to prevent myself from going insane from the demonic blood that was running rampant inside of my body. I could unseal the seals whenever I wanted, but I couldn't guarantee my own sanity if that were to happen. This was why I needed to wait 3 months before moving. And maybe I was a bit too impulsive with my decision. I silently shook my head before heading back to the training room. For now, all I could do was train and try my best to control the demonic blood inside of my body. It was all I could do at this moment. Chapter 693 Melendor. The moment that I turned away from the others and moved myself to another room, my whole body started to shake and my vision twisted. Everything around me became a crimson color, and I felt a weird itch pulse from the area in the middle of my chest. All sorts of different emotions started to surface in my mind, and the muscles on my face twitched uncontrollably. Although I couldn't see myself in the mirror, I was sure that I was smiling, frowning, crying, and displaying all sorts of faces. This is a lot more difficult than I thought. This was one of the side effects of assimilating demonic blood into my body. I was no longer a human but a half-demon of sorts. As such, I was experiencing the cravings that the demons had. That wasn't the only change that I saw. In my field of vision, the scions in the air kept disappearing and reappearing, and in their place were thin black orbs that were drawn in my direction. It was none other than demonic energy. It's starting. Before I took the blood and began to assimilate with it, both Suriel and Angelica forewarned me about the first obstacle I would face. Mind erosion. The stage at which a person will feel an increase in the intensity of all of their feelings. Be it happiness, sadness, or anger. All emotions would see a significant boost, and only by passing this first hurdle would one know that they were able to merge their blood with demonic blood. I took a deep breath and the seals that I had placed inside my body started to glow. My face immediately returned to its normal state, and the demonic blood that had been raging inside of me immediately calmed down. I'm glad I placed the seals inside of my body. I had not yet progressed beyond the beginning stages of mind erosion. At this moment my mind was still clear. I knew that my mind was not in a state to take in such a significant quantity of demonic energy, which was why I had placed the seals inside of my body. Even without the influence of demonic energy, I was only a hair's breadth away from losing all semblance of rationality. The seals weren't there to help me absorb the demonic energy but rather to protect me. I need to carefully think about my next steps of action. I leaned against the wall of the room. Having my rank drop back to S rank wasn't exactly desirable. Although I could get my normal strength back, there was a high risk that the demonic blood contained in me would go rampant and I would end up going crazy. This wasn't something that I wanted. If that were to truly happen, then I would be as good as dead as my consciousness would pretty much disappear. I need to find a way to suppress my desires while keeping my strength in check. The question was how? How exactly would I find a way to keep my head clear at all times while under the influence of the demonic energy inside of my body? If absorbing demonic blood was the price to pay for power, then I was more than willing to make the same decision again despite the fact that I was already aware that doing so would cause me to face a great deal of difficulty in the future. There were now fewer than 2 years left until the seal that Jezebeth placed inside my body would break, resulting in my death. Since I wasn't planning on killing Kevin and the other me was sealed, the only thing I could do at the moment was waiting for my inevitable death. But I wasn't satisfied with this. Despite the fact that I had reconciled the fact that my life would come to an end at some point, I desired to do so on my own terms. Not determined by someone else, especially not the very being that took the life of Small Snake. Even if I did end up dying, he had to die with me. Well, preferably, I don't want to die. What are you planning on doing next? Amanda and I were currently riding in the car together. It turned out that she had come all the way out from the main office to pick me up in her car. Naturally, she was not the one behind the wheel. A designated driver who was a member of the Demon Hunter Guild was the one driving. It was a perk of being the daughter of the largest guild in the human domain, and all I was doing was sponging off of her success. Although I had the financial means to pay for my own driver and I was familiar with the road, I chose to exploit Amanda for transportation rather than hire my own. It just hit differently. To be honest, I'm not too sure. My gaze was transfixed by the constantly shifting landscape that could be seen through the window. I had a clear idea of what I wanted to do, but I was stumped as to how I could actually achieve that one objective. The other version of myself was useless because it refused to communicate with me in any way, shape, or form, and the memories that were contained within my head were no longer as trustworthy as they once were. Not that they had anything on what I wanted. After all, the path I was taking was one that the other me had never taken. From the creation of a new art that was entirely mine to the fact that I was gradually injecting demonic blood into my body. The path I was taking was fraught with danger, and it was one that no one had ever taken before. Some might say that I was crazy and that I had lost my mind, and they were probably right. But I had no choice. It was either do this or wait for my death, which is expected to occur within the next year and a half. Have you tried contacting Kevin? Him. I turned my head to look at Amanda. Why would he? I stopped halfway through my sentence. My eyes slowly widened as a thought suddenly crossed my mind. The current Kevin isn't the Kevin that I know. The previous iteration of Kevin had a reputation for being a pushover and a justice-obsessed fanatic, but the current Kevin was not like that at all. He underwent a total transformation in every aspect. In the past, I had no trouble understanding what he was thinking about. It was as if he were an open book. But all of that had changed ever since 2 years ago. He was no longer someone I could use to my advantage by manipulating or deceiving him into lending me a hand. The current iteration of Kevin was someone about whom I had no prior knowledge, and I found it difficult to get a read on him. In a way, he was like a complete stranger to me. I wasn't going to tell a lie and pretend that our relationship was exactly the same as it had been in the past, but it was undeniably still present. Perhaps he does, in fact, have some information that could be of use to me. Amanda, you're a genius. I am. Amichum. I surprised Amanda by leaning my body toward where she was and kissing her directly, which resulted in her dropping the tablet that she was holding and her eyes opening very wide. Her fists hit me on the shoulders as her eyes darted toward the front driver. A smirk spread across my face when I noticed her action and pushed her down. Her face paled completely and I looked down at her, tracing my thumb over the side of my lips. Would you look at how the tables have turned? Ding. Kevin was startled out of his activity when his phone made a low-pitched chime and rang. Who is it? Kevin owned 2 phones. A private one that was for those that were close to him and a working one that was made for his current job, the Alliance leader. Noting that the phone that rang was his private one, Kevin reached out with his hand and turned the phone. Kevin, do you have time? I have something that I want to discuss with you. It's rather important, so if possible, I'd like it if it were J.N. Eaker office. Kevin's brows furrowed slightly upon reading the message. Autocorrect had clearly failed in the last part of the message, but he was nonetheless able to understand what he was trying to convey. He wants to talk to me about something important? Spelling aside, Kevin found the situation to be rather unexpected. He knew that he would eventually get in touch with Ren, but he hadn't anticipated that it would happen so quickly. What exactly did he want to talk about? Was he still unsettled about the changes he underwent, or was it for something entirely different? Kevin briefly played with his phone before turning his attention to the calendar on his desk and bringing it close to him. First, I need to check if I have time to meet him. The past few weeks had been quite busy, and he wasn't exactly looking for Emma to reprimand him for postponing a meeting. He thus decided to see if he could fit an hour or so into the upcoming days. Oh, looks like I can do that for tomorrow. With a stroke of luck, he was able to find a nice slot for tomorrow. He didn't think twice about replying to Ren's message as his fingers glided across his phone screen. Kevin. I'm free tomorrow for 30 minutes starting from 14:35. Take it or leave it. The next time I'll be free will be in 2 weeks. Ding. Ren, take it. He didn't have to wait long for a reply as he got it within an instant after sending the message. Reading the message, he set the phone down and picked up his work phone. Emma, do me a favor. Make sure that no one bothers me tomorrow at 14:35. Ren will be coming to discuss something with me. Chapter 694 Melendor 3. Knock. Knock. Come in. After hearing a knock on the door, Kevin turned his head to look up as Ren entered the study. The moment that Kevin laid eyes on Ren, a peculiar expression emerged on his face. Ignoring the look that Kevin was giving him, with his eyes curiously wandering around the room, Ren sat on one of the sofas and crossed his legs. Making yourself feel at home? It's a nice place. Ren replied, his eyes still wandering around the room. Unable to remain silent, Kevin opened his mouth to speak. How could he not when Rin entered the room with an enormous black eye? What happened to your E? Don't speak about it. Rin cut him off, his bottom lip twitching. I fell down the stairs. Oh. Kevin nodded, pretending to fall for his bullshit. As if someone would believe an S-ranker can fall down the stairs. Dropping his pen on the table and leaning back in his chair, he crossed his arms together and asked. What did you want to talk to me about? You are well aware of how hectic my schedule has become since I took over as leader of the Alliance. I have at most 30 minutes to talk with you. Right, you're indeed a busy man. Rin withdrew his gaze from the surrounding area and turned his attention back to Kevin. After pausing for a brief period of reflection, he opened his mouth and began to speak. I'll be frank with you. I need your help. With what? Information. Oh. Kevin raised his brow, curious as to what Ren's request would be. Information. What exactly does he want to know? It was an unusual occurrence for Rin to request information from him. He was typically the guy that knew it all. It shows how desperate he must have been for him to even consider asking him for information. After all, he had the memories of hundreds of different regressions. Shoot, I'm all ears. What is it that you want to know? As long as Rin did not ask for any private or confidential information that he was unable to disclose, Kevin didn't see why he wouldn't help Rin. After all, he was still his best friend. Rather than telling you, I'll show you. Rin shifted his weight back in the chair before suddenly raising his arm. At this precise instant, the room began to tremble ever so slightly, and dark scales began to develop on. Kevin abruptly sat up straight. His eyes immediately widened, and his previously unruffled expression underwent a dramatic transformation. On the surface of Ren's skin, a dark color began to emerge, pulsating with such intensity that it spread to every nook and cranny of the room. With each passing second that Ren continued, the pressure that was already present in the room became even more intense, and Kevin, who could no longer take it, stood up. What have you done, Ren? Kevin's eyes were wide open and were concentrating on Ren's arm, which had become completely covered in black scales at that point. As soon as Kevin yelled, the phenomenon that was occurring around the room came to an end, and the demonic energy that had been lingering in the air vanished. At the same time, the scales that were on Ren's arm began to slowly recede back. Ren lowered his arm and looked up at Kevin, his smile bitter. I don't think I need to explain myself. You should already be aware of what I've done. You. Kevin was at a loss for words as he looked at Ren. He was honestly speechless. In spite of having recovered most of his memories, and despite thinking that he had seen it all, Ren did not fail him in bringing him a surprise. Slumping down on his chair, the chair slid a couple of centimeters back, and Kevin raised his head to look at the ceiling before covering his eyes with his arm. I can't believe you would do something as crazy as mixing demonic blood within your body. What in the world made you think that that was a good idea? Kevin muttered in a low tone, his voice still filled with utter disbelief. He was having trouble trying to make heads or tails of the situation. I didn't have much of a choice. Ren, on the other hand, appeared comparatively calm, anticipating Kevin's response from the very beginning and leaning back in his chair. You know, when one only has 2 more years to live, they tend to do things that they would normally not do for the sake of preventing their inevitable death. Well, at least for me it's mostly like that. Kevin opened up his palm and peered at Ren from the gap in his fingers. I've already resigned myself to die one day. I just wanted to die after I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. And for that, I needed strength. Ren leaned in close to Kevin as he looked at him intently, and his tone of voice became very serious. Kevin, I need your help. I know that you're not the same Kevin that I know, but fundamentally you're still him. I know that you have a way to help me. At least, tell me of a way that can help me stop myself from getting corrupted by the side effects of the demonic blood inside my body. Kevin lowered his arm and repositioned his body so that his back was straight. His eyes focused deeply on Ren's as they looked at each other for the next couple of seconds. Kevin eventually let out a long sigh and once again reclined in his chair as he mumbled to himself. I can't believe I'm doing this. Thank you. You shouldn't thank me just yet. Kevin snapped, looking back at Ren, who had a satisfied smile on his face. Kevin's mouth twitched when he saw that. I didn't even say anything, and yet you're already showing me such an expression. It simply demonstrated that, despite his transformation, Rin continued to put her faith in him. Kevin was genuinely confused about how he should feel, but eventually he came to terms with the situation and opened his mouth. Melandoir, he said in a low tone. Rin looked back at him with a serious expression. What did you say? I said Melandoir. Kevin repeated himself. If you want to know of a way to help you with the problems you're currently facing, then your answer is Melandoir. It is the place that holds the solution to your problems. Is it a different planet? Rin asked cautiously. It is. Kevin nodded his head. And it's not just a regular planet like Amora. This is one of the biggest planets within our universe and the planet that used to be the center of the elven world. Don't tell me. Ren's eyes gradually opened, and he began to form an impression of the kind of planet Kevin was referring to. Yeah. Slowly, Kevin nodded his head and continued. Melandoir. The planet where the world tree resides and the place where devil fruits are harvested. Plank. I left Kevin's office, closing the door behind me. I'll help you go there if you need. However, you'll have to provide me with an A-rank core and I can only let you stay there for at most a month. The time difference there is 1 day here is 5 days there and you can bring at most 3 more people with you. Contact me when you're ready. Thinking of the last words Kevin said, my brows gradually furrowed. I can bring a maximum of 3 people and can only stay at most 5 months there, which is about 1 month here. 5 months definitely sounded like a lot. But considering the importance of the planet, it was very obvious that 5 months would actually not be enough for me. There would be, without a doubt, more than one prince/princess ranked demon on the planet, and given my strength, I knew that I was still no match for them. Who should I call? It was very clear to me that I required the assistance of other people in order to succeed. If it were just me, I might have had some trouble. It wasn't so much that I lacked the necessary strength. Rather, it was because I was aware that I couldn't handle everything by myself. At least things wouldn't be as slow if I had a couple of people helping me. After all, time was of the essence for me. I definitely can't call the others since I've tasked them with some important things to take care of for when the monolith actually attacks Ashton City. If I decided to bring anyone from the mercenary group along with me, it would only serve to stop all of those preparations, as the majority of them had not yet been fully completed yet. Who should I call? Who should I call? Are you done with your meeting with Kevin? My head snapped up abruptly, and I was brought out of my musings by the sound of a voice that was familiar to me. Oh, it's you. Wow, what an enthusiastic greeting. Emma smirked, walking toward the reception desk and sitting on it. My brow raised and I looked back at Kevin's office. You've decided to become his secretary? Yup. Emma gave a nod, then leaned her body back and retrieved a couple of documents from the desk she was sitting on while she was doing so. Taking note of her cheerful actions, my brows furrowed ever so slightly. I did notice this during the time when Kevin was elected as the head of the alliance, but it seems like he and Emma have patched things up. Good for him. So, how is life as his secretary? Well, it's not too bad. Emma slowly hopped off the desk and waved the papers toward her face. After that, she moved cautiously toward the door that led to Kevin's office, which was where I came from. It's a lot of work, but the pay's good, so who am I to complain? Wait, aren't you rich? Why would you even care about the pay? Emma's steps came to a sudden stop and she gave me a long sidelong glance. What does that have to do with anything? No, nothing. I just didn't think you would care much about money now that your situation has been settled. Heh. Emma snorted, once again moving towards Kevin's office. It's exactly because I went through that situation that I realized how important money is. Even if my uncle is no longer here, I'll still save money just to avoid a situation like that again. Oh, I see. I nodded my head enlightened. So basically you have PTSD. As soon as I let those words escape my mouth, Emma stumbled on her heels and came dangerously close to hitting her head against the door. I immediately turned around and left before she could utter any complaints. Kevin sent me a lengthy message a long time after I had left, in which he expressed his regret at having helped me and his anger as my actions caused him a great deal of torment. I only laughed and left him on read. I may or may not have done that on purpose. Chapter 695 Melland. Are you fine with going with me? Is your father okay with it? New novel chapters are published on frubnui.com. There should be no problem. Amanda delicately carried the dishes over to the expansive table, which was elegantly adorned with a nice cloth that featured a floral pattern in shades of purple. Going where? Speak of the devil. Edward appeared out of nowhere behind the two of us like a hawk before we could even finish setting the table with the dishes. Amanda calmly looked at him. We're going on a short trip. Where exactly? I'm not sure myself. Amanda shrugged and Edward looked at me. I looked back at him and also shrugged. Don't look at me. My lips are sealed. Is it dangerous? Very. I seriously nodded my head and Edward's face slowly darkened. Taking note of his darkening face, I quickly added. If you're worried about her safety, you shouldn't be. I'm also going with her. With me there, nothing's going to happen to her. That makes me even more worried. Edward commented, prompting my brows to furrow. I'm stronger than you. Are you now? Edward moved forward, crackling his fist in front of me. Not wanting to be outdone, I also took a step forward. Natasha, however, intervened between the two of us and smiled at Edward before I had the chance to take any action. Now, how about you stop causing trouble? The whole reason we're having this dinner is because they'll be leaving soon. Let's be honest now, staying in the human domain is not really that safe either. But I'm here. I can protect it. Edward grumbled, but he cut himself off in the middle of his sentence. After observing that Natasha's face was becoming darker, he decided to keep his mouth shut and take a seat. The top executives of the Demon Hunter Guild had their own opulent apartment built within the territory of the guild, which we were currently occupying. Edward did not decide to live in the mercenary headquarters as my parents did, as he was capable of providing for his own safety and because he was responsible for running a guild. Stop fighting, you two, the food is ready. My mother emerged from the kitchen carrying what appeared to be a large hot tray that held a large chicken. On the tray was also something that looked like a large knife. We're here to see Amanda and Ren off before they leave. Let's not sour the mood. She was very careful as she placed the chicken on the table and patted her hands on the apron that she was wearing. Are you fine with them leaving for so long? Edward asked, seated opposite my mother. I'm certainly not happy, but it's not like I can stop him. For as long as he tells me that he's leaving, then I'm mostly fine with it. Well, fine. Edward sat back in his chair and relaxed while pouring a glass of wine for himself. After he had finished filling his cup, he looked over at my father, who had sneakily taken a seat at the table next to my mother, and he extended the wine glass to him. Do you want some? No, thank you. My father politely refused with a smile on his face. Before Edward could insist, I chimed in. He can't take alcohol. Huh. Edward looked stunned for a moment as he pointed at the bottle in his hand. But this is wine. I'm sure he won't get drunk off of this. You'll be surprised. I cast a sidelong glance in the direction of my father but paid no attention to the change in expression that appeared on his face and continued. He can even get drunk off of beer. It won't Ren. I stopped speaking the moment that I heard my father's voice. Without looking at him, I picked up my fork and leaned toward where the chicken was, trying to get a piece of it. At the same time, I tried to change the topic. I spoke too much. This chicken looks very Ow. I wasn't even close to getting to the chicken when someone smacked me in the hand. It turned out that my own mother was to blame and she gave me a stern look in response. Who told you to go ahead and eat first? Wait for everyone to sit down first before taking the food. No buts. I didn't raise you to be this rude. Now that we're at it, you'll be the last one to eat. PFD. The instant I heard a laugh coming from my right side, my face darkened, and my head snapped in that direction immediately afterwards. The only problem was that Amanda had a blank expression on her face as she sat quietly with her posture correct and her eyes focused on the food. She was clearly feigning ignorance. You thought it was funny, didn't you? I asked, leaning closer to her. My eyes squinting. No. Amanda looked back at me, her face expressionless. My eyes furrowed tightly. You think I wouldn't be able to hear your laugh? I have no idea what you're talking about. Amanda continued to feign ignorance and my eyes turned into thin slits. I see. I slowly nodded my head and took my eyes away from her. So be it. Pretend that you don't know. I'll see how you deal with you later. As if I would let something like this slide. There was also the matter regarding the black eye that I needed to pay her back for. Well, that was mainly my fault. But I wasn't going to let that slide. Come, Nola, sit next to your brother. Nola, who was preoccupied with her phone when she arrived, was the last person to take a seat at the table. At this point I had no choice but to admit that she was a full-fledged addict. It seemed like every time I saw her, she had her face buried in her phone. But I couldn't really blame her. Her addiction was understandable, given that she did not have any friends with whom she could play in light of our current circumstances. I probably would have been no different from her had I been in her circumstances. In any case, she was apparently raising a pet, and she needed to take care of it constantly. "No, Ma. No." Nola immediately began to object when our mother took the phone away from her hands. "We're about to have dinner. I'll give the phone back to you later." "No, but I didn't feed Rin yet." I turned my head to look at Nola. What did she mean by feeding Rin? Was she afraid that I would not get anything to eat since I would be the last one to eat? I could feel the edges of my lips curl upward. How sweet of her. "You can feed him later. Eat first." "No buts." The moment my mother raised her voice, Nola's mood immediately took a turn for the worse, and she stomped her way over to the seat next to mine, grumbling the whole way. Why does this scene look familiar? For some odd reason, it reminded me of the scene that occurred a couple of minutes ago with the chicken and me. I was probably overthinking things. With a large pouty face, Nola fiddled with the utensils in front of her. Cute. Her current appearance was nothing short of cute. Leaning my body over to her, I smiled. "Nola, you don't have to worry about feeding me. There will definitely be food for me later. Though I do appreciate the fact that you're thinking about me." I patted her gently on the head, only to have my hand shoved back a little. Nola gave me a sulky look while muttering to herself and crossing her arms in front of her chest. Her appearance was nothing short of adorable. "Who wants to feed you?" "What do you mean? Didn't you just say that you wanted to feed me?" "No." Nola looked at me confused. I looked back at her, also confused. "No, I think I clearly remember you saying that you wanted to feed me." "No." Nola shook her head, her expression even more confused than before. "Wait, what? Did I mishear?" She was referring to her pet. "Its name is Rin." I heard my mother's voice coming from across me before I could say anything else. PFDE. My face froze and I heard another muffled laugh coming from beside me. My lips twitched ever so slightly and I moved away from Nola. It looks like she finally reached her rebellious phase. Nola changed. She was no longer the sweet little sister of the past. The thought that Nola was no longer the same adorable little girl who had been so attached to me in the past caused an immense amount of pain in my chest. In the midst of my despair, I didn't forget to look at Amanda, who was beside me. "Don't think for a second that I didn't notice your laugh." She possessed the same expressionless look that she had previously displayed throughout all of our interactions. She then cocked her head to the side to look at me, her fine brow raising slightly. "Yes." "Ha ha ha." I laughed. Of course, it wasn't a laugh out of joy but one filled with spite. I'm definitely remembering this. Alliance headquarters, Monday. "Well, hurry up, I've got a lot of work to do." Kevin yawned while his eyes wandered about the room, finally pausing on Rin and a couple of other people. He shifted his attention to Rin. "How did you manage to convince them to follow you?" "Well..." Rin scratched the inside of his cheek before looking behind him, specifically in the direction of Jean and Melissa, who both wore similar expressions. In short, they weren't very pleased. Rin coughed, immediately shifting the topic of conversation away. "So, are you ready? 'Cause I'm ready to go and so are the others. Let's just go." He waved his hand and tossed a small yellow orb in Kevin's direction. Catching it with his hand, Kevin looked at it and secretly sighed. "Alright, I'll start the portal. You guys get ready." Kevin already knew beforehand that Rin had bribed Jin's grandfather and used some sort of bribe to convince the likes of Jean and Melissa to follow him. He's probably regretting his past decisions about kidnapping Jean. By now he would probably know that making him come was as easy as convincing his grandfather, which wasn't all that hard. So, it was no longer any of his business anymore. "Get ready." Kevin gave a heads up to the others present before he crushed the orb in his hand, and a familiar scene materialized in front of all of them. The mana in the room started to become more concentrated, and thin threads of various colors began to form in the space directly in front of him. Within the space of a minute, the threads came together to form a massive portal that loomed over the expansive room that they were in. Making sure that everything was working properly and the coordinates to the portal were indeed set to Melindwar, Kevin took a step back and looked at the others, extending his hand. My job is done, your turn.